Welcome to Derek's Zoo Videos, my channel where I share my passion for wildlife and zoos. Today's agenda is my second top 10 list. If you want to see my first one, you can check out my already severely outdated list of my top 10 favorite zoos. Now, we'll be looking at facilities that may one day be on that list. My top 10 zoos that I want to visit. To get the housekeeping out of the way first, I debated whether or not to include international zoos on this list, but the reality is I'm just not familiar enough with 99% of those zoos to really have a desire to visit any one in particular. So the official top 10 will be limited to zoos within the United States. However, I will be mentioning the 3 international zoos that, for one reason or another, I do have a stronger desire to visit throughout the video. The only other criteria for this list is of course that I've never been there before, and mostly to avoid this video being outdated after just a month or two, I'm also omitting zoos that I already have plans to visit soon. So if you're wondering why a zoo did not make the list, it might be that I've been there before, or maybe you just figured out my upcoming plans. Last thing before we start the list, I want you all to share what zoos are on your bucket list in the comments, or give a pitch for why I should visit a particular zoo. Beginning at number 10 with Zoo Atlanta. A modest 40 acres, mostly comprised of some well-rounded African and Asian regions, highlighted by large great ape troops. The scaly, slimy spectacular looks, well, spectacular. For the moment, Atlanta is home to the country's only giant pandas, but for me the biggest draw would be what I believe are the only drills in the US. Moving west to the Oklahoma City Zoo. Over 3 times the size of Atlanta, some of Oklahoma City's appeal includes a good collection of both big and more uniquely small cats. There's a large herd of Asian elephants, as well as rhinos, cassowaries, and even raccoon dogs in Sanctuary Asia. I always like when North American sections focus on their state's local wildlife, and this zoo obliges with the Oklahoma Trails. Newest of all is the half-opened Expedition Africa, which marked the arrival of some feisty honey badgers, a rare sight in US zoos. Next on the list, Zoo Miami, a massive facility with over 300 developed acres. The main reason I suspect I would love a visit to this facility is the numerous open-air exhibit designs, great for photography. Within these exhibits is an exceptional collection of large, hoofed animals, giant eland, sable antelope, bantang, gar, and more. High-quality South American attractions are hard to come by, especially in the Midwest where I'm located, so Amazon and beyond is another great reason to pay Zoo Miami a visit. And, like Oklahoma, there's a solid section dedicated to native wildlife. Next, I want to make my first international mention, although this one is just a short way over the border. The Toronto Zoo. Its proximity is partially to thank for its inclusion here, since it is by far the most realistic international zoo for me to visit at this time. As a Michigan native, it would actually only be around a 5-hour drive. However, there's good reason to want to visit it as well. For one, it's humongous, with over twice the land size of Zoo Miami, which I just called massive itself. Toronto divides its zoo into geographic regions, my personal favorite method for organizing exhibits. And these include dedicated Eurasian and Canadian regions, which I haven't seen before at other zoos. Finally, to call out just a few species I'd personally look forward to seeing, there's mouflon, West Caucasian turs, olive baboons, and wood bison. Back to the US, number 7, the Kansas City Zoo. What I suspect to be one of America's most underrated zoos, although I'd have to visit to confirm that. I don't seem to hear much about this place, but it has to have a contender for the country's most extensive African collection, with more homage paid to the continent's smaller species than most. Smaller Asian and Australian sections have enticing species like tree kangaroos and lion-tailed macaques, and then there's the brand new Ocean Aquarium, a feature not too many zoos have. All in all, Kansas City looks like a place well worth visiting. Moving up the list and out to the northwest with Seattle's Woodland Park Zoo, a place I really wish was closer to me, but Woodland Park has caught my attention for a few reasons. The habitats of the living Northwest Trail, at least in photos, look like some of the most natural I've ever seen. I mean, this has got to be a contender for the best brown bear exhibit in the United States. I'd also love to see my first mountain goats, although this isn't the only zoo on this list that could check that box for me. Tropical Asia, Rhino Reserve, and the Tropical Rainforest are some other good quality attractions that round out a really solid facility. Quickly flipping sides of the country, my number 5 spot goes to the North Carolina Zoo. I'm a big fan of zoos with large, natural exhibits, and few places do that better than North Carolina. The zoo claims over 2,500 acres, and even with only 500 of that being developed, it is still on the bigger side of large for a zoo. Currently, the zoo almost exclusively displays animals from just 2 continents, Africa and North America, but it's hard to view that as a negative when their respective exhibits dedicated to each of these continents are among the best in the nation, and with rumored expansions on the way. Now, for my second international mention, I don't think it will surprise anyone that the Australia Zoo is on my bucket list. Like many of you, I'm sure, I watched Crocodile Hunter growing up, and it would be special to see the legacy Steve left behind. In addition, while this could apply to any zoo in Australia, it would be cool to see such an abundance of Australian wildlife in one place, since they usually get a small section at best in the States. Moving on, my number 4 pick might surprise some of you, the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo in Colorado Springs. While I'm not the biggest species list hunter, I do have some species I'd like to see before, in all likelihood, they are completely phased out of the AZA. 2 of these can be found at Cheyenne Mountain, with the Asiatic black bear and the mountain tapir. Outside of these specific animals, this zoo has some very unique exhibits like the newer Water's Edge, and is a strong contender for the most unique setting of any US zoo, settled within the beautiful mountains of Colorado. On to the top 3. I don't have much desire to ever go to New York, but if there's one thing that could get me there, it would be the Bronx Zoo. A lot of zoos don't even boast one true must-see attraction, but between Jungle World, Congo Gorilla Forest, and Madagascar, the Bronx has at least 3. And for it being such a unique concept, I think there's an argument the Mouse House fits that description as well. From what I've seen, even the zoo's bird buildings look incredible. The Bronx is one of only 2 places in the country to see geladas, who live with ibexes, another species that keeps eluding me, and there's a whole lot more I didn't even mention. Next, the only other place to display geladas, and one you've probably all been expecting. The world-famous San Diego Zoo packs so much onto its roughly 100 acres that I imagine attempting to pre-plan a visit would be a little intimidating. There's multiple sections that could take you multiple hours to go through, most notably the expansive Lost Forest, where you're almost guaranteed to actually get lost. I also have to shout out the incredible Africa Rocks, the uniquely themed Elephant Odyssey, and the one-of-a-kind Wildlife Explorers Base Camp. As badly as I want to visit San Diego, I might hold off for just a few more years to see if those cuddly black and white bears make their rumored return. Even without them, San Diego's current collection is rivaled perhaps only by my number 1 pick, which will be revealed right after my final international shoutout, the Singapore Zoo. Admittedly, I don't know a ton about this place, but from the map and from photos, it looks amazing. However, my main reason for wanting to go there comes down to just one single species. I mean, who could resist the opportunity to see the iconic nose of a proboscis monkey? And now, for the number 1 zoo that I want to visit. Omaha's Henry Doorly Zoo. What I said about the Bronx having must-see exhibits definitely applies to Omaha as well. The Lied Jungle and Desert Dome are the type of exhibits every zoo enthusiast just has to see. and the Asian Highlands has got to be a strong contender for the most beautifully designed exhibit of all time, at least from what I've seen online. There's also an extensive African section, top-notch Great Ape Complex, and Nocturnal Building hidden under the Desert Dome. Like my other top picks, Omaha has an amazing collection full of species you don't see at every zoo. And when you put that all together, I can't imagine a zoo I'd rather spend the day at more than this one. And that does it for today's list. Thank you for sitting through what is essentially my zoo bucket list. I've been fortunate enough to visit a ton of zoos the last few years. Just 2 years ago, places like Memphis, Brookfield, and Minnesota probably would have been on this list. In the future, I look forward to checking off the zoos I listed today one by one and showcasing them for all of you. For now, please check out my growing playlist of highlights and exhibit tours featuring 20 of the zoos that I have already visited. Thank you for watching.